Hello and welcome back to Tits, Tums and All Things Mum. I'm here with the lovely Surrey Mumma, Tasha, today. How are you?
I'm good, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on as well.
Thank you for coming. And can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Tasha. I live in Surrey, hence the Surrey Mumma name. And,
never would have guessed.
I'm a NHS professional, so I've worked in healthcare for nearly 20 years, and I have two tiny humans that are 5 and 3. So a boy that's 5 and a girl that's 3. And I live with my husband, and he is also a very busy career professional. So and we have no family or anything around us. So it's been interesting.
Busy. Your kids are the same age as mine, but the opposite way round.
Right, okay.
So how did you find that age gap?
Quicker than we expected, which is really good, and really happy about that. But it was intense. And now they're getting a little bit older. It's easier in some ways, but kind of that sort of having a newborn and very much a toddler that really needed a lot from us still was difficult. And it was obviously lockdown. You will have gone through exactly the same. So that thing of not having family around us was tricky, although nobody had family around them at that point.
The only saving grace was you could just literally stay in your pajamas all day and just
and
not
you didn't
do
have
anything.
people just turn up uninvited. It was
quite nice. But then having a toddler, like my eldest, was very much still dependent on me. She'd only just potty trained, so I'd be like mid breastfeed and she'd be like, "Mum, I've done a poo," and I'm like, "Why?" And then the baby screaming, and then oh god, it was just it's fun, isn't it? But mine was the same, faster than expected, but very much welcomed.
Definitely.
So you talk a lot about your ADHD story on your social media, and we were just laughing before because everyone pretty much that comes on this podcast has either been diagnosed with ADHD or is suspecting that they have ADHD. And you were just saying that neurodiversity attracts neurodiversity, because I'm laughing like, why is everyone coming on here with ADHD? But I guess I attract that sort of people because I'm the same. But also we're quite often women in business with ADHD, because you get an idea and you just go with it, don't you? But do you mind telling us your ADHD story? Like, are you diagnosed? Are you self-diagnosed?
Yes, of course. So my job for the last 3 years has actually been working in mental health. So very much kind of exposed to a lot of sort of kind of more mental health diagnosis. And I mean, I've sat and thought, do I have personality disorder? Am I bipolar? All of those things. But actually, I think a lot of things like that, it is also just that, you're busy mums and your head is in a million different places and it's intense. And kind of very much sort of exposed to a lot more of that. But also, and I know we'll come on to it in a little while, but I lost my mum just at the beginning of the pandemic. So she was 53. She passed away from breast cancer, and I was 12 weeks pregnant with our second. Had a 1-year-old at home, and just kind of the world just shut down for me personally, but also the rest of the world shut down because of the pandemic. And I think kind of through that time, obviously I was navigating grief, and I'd gone to see my GP about kind of anxiety and grief and kind of getting support. And whenever I would talk to the GP, very much so, they would just, you've got a lot on. It's really obvious why you're kind of feeling the way that you're feeling. And there's been periods in my life where that's been the case, and I've kind of really sort of suffered with anxiety. But then kind of fast forward a year, as we kind of started to come a little bit more into normality, my son started going to a forest school, and I met a really lovely mum who also had a daughter the same age as my son. And we just got talking, and she mentioned that she'd just been diagnosed with ADHD. And I suppose at this point, because of my job, I was aware of it, but I didn't know a lot about it. And I very much, probably like the rest of the world, kind of stereotyped ADHD as naughty little boys that won't sit still, because I think that's what's very much ingrained in us, isn't it? And when she was talking to me about the reason she had gone to see her GP and gone through that diagnosis and kind of what had led her to that, I was thinking, you're literally describing my life, and kind of park the big traumatic things that have happened. Actually, everything you're describing really resonates with me. So I went back to speak to my GP and had the conversation, and she said they could refer me, but it was a long wait. So personally, because I knew my friend's story, she had gone through Right to Choose and gone to a charity called Psychiatry UK, and she'd waited about 6 months. So I asked for the same. I asked to be referred in through that route. So I actually only had to wait for 9 months.
Oh, that's good.
And I got diagnosed last March.
Oh, yeah,
the challenge with diagnosis is it's not like that kind of fixes it. And actually the problem is that because there is such a lot of demand now, and there is, you know, not enough capacity out there to really support people. I didn't want to go down the medication route for personal reasons, and I wanted the kind of therapeutic support, but there isn't the offer there. So I have a diagnosis, but I still don't really have any kind of answers or enough support that I feel I know a lot about it, if that makes sense, and I know how to cope with it. So very much listening to lots of ADHD podcasts, reading resources and things, and just kind of learning what I can from people further along on their journey has been how I've kind of navigated it.
Yeah. Amazing. And when you got that diagnosis, did it give you like a sense of relief of like, oh, like this is what's been going on with me this whole time?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll be totally honest, when she said it, I came off the call, because it was obviously virtual, came off the call and just burst into tears. And I was actually doing I'm trained as an exec coach, and I did my training last year, but I was in that week of doing my training. So it was very much about kind of deep dive into who you are as a person, how you will be as a coach and things. So I kind of came back onto my coaching session the next day and obviously explained all of this. And everybody was lovely, like this whole group of strangers that I'd never met before. And I just told them all that I'd just been diagnosed with ADHD. Which is such an ADHD thing to do, just to kind of totally overshare and tell strangers your life history. But I had a sense of relief because it explained a lot. But then I think there was that thing of just, you know, thinking back to myself as like a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, and just some of the things I found really difficult, and just almost feeling a bit let down. And I don't mean let down by my parents, but just let down generally, because things may have been very different. I may not have had the struggles that I had at school or kind of growing up as a teenager, and it just it made a lot of sense. And I think the key takeaway for me is, diagnosis or not, if you recognise traits, you now have the luxury of having such a wealth of information at your fingertips that you can go out and you can find the answers. And I hope, and what I'm trying really hard to do, is to parent better. So to parent better as a parent with ADHD, being mindful that the likelihood is possibly my children will have traits of ADHD if they don't have ADHD. So I think it's that, using that information that you have to hopefully just make better choices.
Definitely. But it's almost like you kind of grieve for the little child that didn't have the diagnosis, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because like when I think back to my childhood and how much I struggled, mostly socially, but also with like academics as well. I kind of grieve for that little girl, and I feel bad that she didn't, because I've had like the eureka moment in adulthood where I've just taken the mask off, and I've just been like, okay, I can now be me. I don't need to conform to what society thinks I should be. And I wish that little girl had the opportunity to take her mask off, because it's so sad that you have to go through life pretending to be someone else when you've got ADHD, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think so, because of the role that I do as well at the moment within mental health, I think I'm really fortunate that one of my closest colleagues also has ADHD, and she has been incredible and really supportive of me, because I hadn't really told anybody at work before I met her. And because she also has it, she's really sort of supported me. She's a bit older than me, so she's kind of like a big sister. And she's been amazing, and both of us very much advocate for neurodiversity. And it's interesting, earlier this week I was in a workshop which was around sort of children's mental health and actually how we can better support children. And one of the reflections that I have that I've discussed with this colleague as well is, the world is set up for neurotypical people. However, neurodiverse people make up probably the majority of the population. And there's no harm in setting things up for neurodiversity. It won't cause harm to people that aren't neurodiverse. But actually a lot of things that aren't set up for us can cause us harm and can cause us trauma, and very much I think then contribute to mental health and well-being as you get older. So I just think there's a lot more that we can do as a society. And there's a fantastic woman on LinkedIn who I'm going to link in with. So she's called Leanne, and she runs ADHD Girls, and she's got ADHD herself, and she really advocates for it, and she's trying to push a bill that actually, you know, supporting neurodiversity becomes the default, not the exception. So I think it's just, you know, really kind of championing that when we've got it, when you see other people that may or may not have it, just sort of trying to do what you can to support. And I guess it's now about us kind of normalising it. And like you said, if you suspect that your child does have it, just kind of normalising it and allowing them to have their mask off, not teaching them that they have to mask it the whole time.
like allowing them to have the big emotions, to burn out, all of those things, and just supporting them through it. How have you managed parenting with ADHD? Because honestly, I feel like parenting and ADHD do not fit together.
No.
At all.
And it's, you know, a lot of, I saw one of these like memes on Instagram, and it said something like the things you find triggering in your children are the things you didn't feel supported with as a child.
Yeah.
And if you can sort of step back and take the emotion out of it and see those scenarios in that way, I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
But of course, with ADHD, that's really difficult to do in the moment. And so you become emotionally dysregulated yourself, and, you know, your child's screaming at you because they're not getting their way. The kind of, I think that the inner child in you wants to kind of scream back and sort of, you know, have that kind of real sort of temper tantrum. And it's hard, and it is triggering. And, you know, some days I do better than others, and some days I, you know, then go into that kind of massive sort of rejection sensitivity dysphoria where I feel like I've totally got it wrong, and I beat myself up about it. But, you know, it's about learning. And I suppose the one thing, and whether or not my husband would agree with this, but the one thing that I really want to do with my kids is teach them that you can't be perfect all the time, and it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to get it wrong. And it's that recognizing that, even if it's a little bit later, recognizing it and owning it. And I'm not good at that. If I feel caught out, or I feel like I've done something wrong, I will defend my position and argue against it. And actually what I'm having to relearn now is almost kind of parenting myself to relearn that, you know, that's okay, and it's normal, and you're not going to be in trouble if you get something wrong, but you have to own up to it, and you have to own it.
See, that's my husband. So like if I shout or get cross with the kids for something that is me, like me being dysregulated, I will quite quickly apologize. But my husband, if I like give him the look to be like, stop, like you're dysregulated, because he's 100% got ADHD as well. He's starting to see it now. When I first said it, he was like, oh, no, I haven't. And now he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I think you're right. But when he's dysregulated and he's shouting at the kids and I give him the look, he's very much like, don't question my parenting, and he won't apologise. So he's very much that kind of version where he kind of gets his back up when he feels like he's done something wrong. So, but we're all still learning, aren't we? And there's so much out there at the moment with gentle parenting and responsive parenting, and those things are lovely, but it's really hard to do when you're dysregulated, when you've got sensory overload, when you're just struggling yourself.
And I think that's why, you know, clearly why you have a big following as well, and you know, other kind of mums that are on the platform like yourself. There is something about, you know, social media is actually so bad for our mental health, so bad. And because, you know, all you do is you go on and you see people having their perfect holidays, their perfect home that's spotless. You know, they've got their perfect children that don't have tantrums and don't throw their food or don't refuse to eat. And I think kind of it's just ingrained in us that, well, that we're not good enough. And when you have ADHD, it's that rejection sensitivity dysphoria. You feel like you're failing because you're constantly just reminded of all the sort of perfection that is out there. And it's kind of, you know, when we were teenagers, all we had was magazines that we would buy, and there'd be kind of like, you know, perfect model women in there, all teenagers or whatever, and that would be kind of the extent of it, I think. Now it's literally everywhere. And so I think the message that like you put on your platform that I've tried to do with mine is actually that's not real life, and this is real life, and it's messy, and it's chocolate covered and fueled by caffeine, and it's not perfect, and that's so important. And I think particularly for our children it's really important to see that.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think with ADHD, like I see these tidy houses, like these spotless houses, but I'm literally like a fart in the wind at home. Like when there's mess everywhere, I'm like, ugh, like where do I go? What do I do? And with a husband that's also potentially ADHD, we're just both like there, like what do we do? Where do we tidy? So the house just ends up a bit of a tip a lot of the time, because we can't function correctly to be able to keep it tidy. I mean, we'll go into a real hyper focus on like a Saturday sometimes, and the whole house becomes absolutely spotless. And that'll last like a day, and then it goes back to us not being able to function and not being able to keep it tidy. We're exactly the same. So one of the things when I went back to work was that I was really kind of struggling to do it all, and my husband works in London quite a lot, and he's full-time and obviously works more hours than me.
And so one of the things I said is, look, you know, I'm really struggling to kind of keep the house clean. What can we do? And he said, well, you know, we earn good money. We'll get a cleaner. So we do have a cleaner once a fortnight. She's amazing. She's incredible. But then the night before, I literally go like a mad thing, tidying the whole house so that she can come and clean. Yeah. So that, you know, so it gives it a good clean. And I think there's just something to kind of be celebrated. I don't know about you, but whenever I have mum friends with their kids come over, I'm always like, I'm so sorry about the mess. And I've literally run around like a headless chicken for the hour before, making it as spotless as I possibly can. Yeah. And I think there's almost just something to be celebrated about mums that you invite into your house that you don't feel you've got to do that with, or that you know, they can kind of see you for who you really are, because it's exhausting.
It really is. My friendship circle has completely transformed since I've become a mum, and now the majority of my friends have also got ADHD, so we can quite freely walk into each other's houses and there'll just be shit everywhere and we're just like that's cool, like I get it, and we'll both just sit there probably on our phones, like not really talking to each other because we're just so burnt out, and we accept that that's okay. Like, we're in each other's company, we love each other, the kids are playing, but we just like need a moment. And I love that for us. I love that we can just completely unmask and be ourselves around each other.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it is really important. Because the last thing that you need, you know, life is very short, very precious. The last thing that you need is friends that make you feel bad about yourself, or make you feel like you've got to be somebody that you're not. Because I think we basically, you know, our generation spent our teenage years doing exactly that. Trying to be something that we are not, because we didn't know any different.
Definitely. And it's like we're having to undo that now, isn't it? Like, as we grow up and as we're mums, we're having to sort of unlearn that behaviour so that we don't teach that to our kids as well, which is a lot of pressure. So I feel like this generation of mums or parents are under so much pressure to just undo the generational things that we have learned and try and reparent ourselves whilst also parenting our children.
And the thing is, it's not like there's a textbook that you can go and read and it'll say, if you're doing this, this is what you need to do. You know, it is very much about kind of breaking those old habits and behaviours and relearning it. And, I mean, I'm absolutely not an expert, but I follow lots of really amazing people like Anna Martha who are experts in a lot of this stuff. And that for me, again, kind of brings me a lot of comfort, because obviously that is very much her trade, but she also has a lot of kind of challenges that she works through that she's really open about. And again, like you said before, it normalises it, and that's really important.
I love that Anna Martha just openly talks about her challenges, and she is one of the people that is making social media better by talking about the challenges, the messy homes, the messy hair, all of that stuff. And I hope we're heading in the right direction on social media to make it a bit more realistic for the sake of our kids.
Definitely.
So you briefly touched on earlier sadly losing your mum a few years ago. How has it been navigating grief through motherhood as well?
I mean, being totally honest, there is no words to describe it. I mean, I was really fortunate. I had a really good relationship with my mum. I mean, we fought. I suspect my mum probably had ADHD as well.
Same.
But yeah, she was my person. And I will try really hard not to cry. I've done a lot of crying about it this week. So she was my person. She was my person that I would go to and vent and complain about my day, and she would just listen and go, yeah, it's really shit. And that's sometimes kind of what you need. And I think the thing is, I do need fixing in a lot of ways, but actually I need my mum a lot of the time. And I think, you know, I had a 1-year-old and I was 12 weeks pregnant when she died. And literally, so she passed away on the 4th of March. We obviously went into lockdown on the 23rd, and we kind of managed to get her funeral just before that. But I mean, even the funeral went from kind of being a big thing to then literally 10 people. And I was only very early pregnant, so wasn't kind of making it common knowledge. And then obviously the world shut down literally 5 days later. So that thing of, you know, when people were saying through COVID, you know, I can't wait to return to normal, my normal had gone completely. And actually, I would argue that probably normal for everybody now is very different to what it was before. But it was really hard, because I obviously had to go through my second pregnancy, the world literally imploding, all without the person that I kind of, you know, very much depended on and had always been there. And it's really it's difficult. I mean, my second birth with my daughter, I kind of went through this thing of feeling that I had to be a bit of a superhero with it, and it was really stupid. And all this stuff about, you don't have to have painkillers. Yeah, some people might not need to, but I definitely should have had pain relief, because I had this thing that my mum had gone through cancer, and the most painful, horrific thing that you could go through, and so this is the most natural thing in the world, and I can do it, and I don't need any pain relief, and I'm going to do it. And it was absolutely horrendous. And really quite traumatic. And I regret that I went through that, because I felt I had to. I felt I had something to prove, because you don't have to prove anything. We do not live in a third world country, and we have these amazing medical advancements that mean we don't have to go through that. But I put myself through that, and worse, I put my husband through that, because he had to kind of obviously respect my wishes and just watch me torture myself when I didn't need to, but I felt like I had to do it. So that was hard. But I think because I had lost my mum, the most significant female character in my life, to then have a daughter was really special. And she really completed our family. And I think that the hard thing is that obviously my mum wasn't around to see that, and to see how she interacts with my son, how my son interacts with her, and just see the incredible little people that they're becoming. And that's the hardest thing, is that the highs, she's not there to be a part of it, to celebrate it. And the lows, she's not there to have me scream and vent to her down the phone about how hard it is. And that's tricky. But so I'm really fortunate I have a sister, although she deserted me and moved to Singapore with her family, which I'm just about forgiving her for. But she's amazing, my sister. So she's younger than me, and so obviously she's also had to navigate through losing my mum, being a mum. Her kids are slightly older, so they're 9 and 7. So my eldest niece was old enough to remember she was 3 when my mum died. So, and her and my mum were like best friends. So that's been really hard. And obviously my sister's gone through a very different experience. But when there's things that I kind of wish I could call mum about, I speak to her. And one of the things she said to me is that, when you're a mum and you become a mum for the first time, you're learning how to become a mum. When you have your second child, you learn how to enjoy it. And that's not anything against your first child, but you've never done it before, so you are learning. And she said to me that my mum, and I didn't know this, but she said my mum always used to describe us as I was her pride and my sister was her joy. Because with me, obviously everything was a first, so she was really proud of everything. Whereas with my sister, she found the joy in those things because it wasn't so scary or intimidating or hard. And my sister said it wasn't until she had her second that she realised what my mum meant by that. And I very much see that. I mean, I'm proud of both of my children, and they both bring me a lot of joy. But there's things I found hard with my son that I enjoy a little bit more with my daughter, because I've been there, I've done that. I know they're not gonna hurt themselves, like weaning and things like that. My son, we'd just be like, oh, he's choking, stop. Whereas my daughter, I mean, she literally was just like grabbing food off our plate, and and you're
off the
more
floor.
comfortable. Absolutely, and you're more comfortable with it. So it's those highs and lows are really hard. And I think the one thing I would say about it is everybody's experience is different. And I think one of the things I'm trying really hard to learn is that it doesn't matter if it's 3 months since you lost that significant person in your life or 20 years. It can feel just as intense now as it did when it first happened. And I had cruise bereavement therapy about a year after my mum died, and it was really amazing. And I thought I'd kind of moved into the next phase of my grief, but actually the last couple of months have been quite tricky, and I've just started having bereavement therapy again with cruise. So I think that's the thing, is you don't have to suffer, you don't have to face it alone. And if the people in your life can't support you because they don't know the answers, there are people out there that are trained in it and will help you, because the hardest thing is feeling like a burden to your family, to your friends, because they've not been through it. Thank God they've not been through it. But there are people out there that are trained in how to help. So I just encourage anybody to really seek support if they need it. And there's no shame in that.
No, not at all. And how was it kind of day to day dealing with that grief whilst also having a little one to sort of manage as well?
So if you remember those first couple of weeks of COVID, like everybody felt like they were an undercover spy, would be kind of how I would describe it. I mean, obviously I was really grieving, but it was that thing of you'd go out and the streets would be empty.
It was creepy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But we were just in our little bubble. And actually I really needed that. And it was hard not to have like my dad and my sister around to kind of just go and cry to and hug and everything.
Yeah.
But then actually when we got to do those things, they were so much more special.
Yeah.
And there are sort of significant things that I remember that we did during lockdown and kind of sort of after lockdown, where we, you know, sort of really were grateful for everything that we had. And also, you know, so many people lost people that they loved through COVID and they weren't there. And I'm sure that there is so much trauma from that.
Yeah.
We literally spent the last dire moments of my mum's life with her, by her side.
Yeah.
And she, you know, she knew that we were there, and I will forever be grateful for that. So although I wish every single day that she was still here, had it been 2 weeks later, she would have been on her own.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been able to be there. And I just cannot imagine that at all. So I'm grateful for that. And that sounds a weird thing to say, that I'm grateful that she died when she did. But
I fully understand. Working in ICU,
absolutely.
I had to see so many people die without their relatives and just see their relatives on an iPad screen. And it was just awful. Like, we took the humanity out of life in that first lockdown. It was just the weirdest experience, wasn't it? And I still to this day, I don't know if you feel the same. I look back at it and I'm like, did that happen? Like, was that real? Yeah. Like, just going to the supermarket and seeing the empty shelves and people having to stay 2 meters apart. And like, I remember actually crying in the supermarket with just pure anxiety, because I was like, what the hell is going to happen? Like, what's going on?
Well, and funny story. So we lived in Weybridge at the time, and so my husband, he was like, no, you need to stay in the house, you need to be safe, you need to look after our son, and you know, you need to keep yourself safe, and you know,
because you were pregnant as well, so
and so he would kind of go and do the kind of covert supermarket operation, and he was really great. He kind of reached out to all of our neighbours. We had quite a lot of elderly neighbours at the time, and you know, offered to go and pick things up for them. But what was really funny is, he kept going into the supermarket and seeing Nicole Scherzinger. And I thought he was making it up. I was like, yeah, whatever. And he'd come home and he'd be like, yeah, she's tiny. She's really short, but really like petite as well. And then it was a couple of months later, I was allowed out and, you know, things were opening up a bit and you kind of had a bit more of an idea about what the world was like. And I went in there and I was like, look, she's there. And she was in there with Tom Evans, because he lived in like probably one of the private estates just outside of Weybridge. So it was really funny that, you know, normal life probably never would have seen Nicole Scherzinger and Tom Evans in Waitrose.
Well, they probably don't do their own shopping normally, do they?
So so that was quite a remarkable thing to happen.
God, that's so funny.
And it was like kind of a little bit of sort of gossip around there. Oh, guess you have just seen in the supermarket.
I didn't see any celebrities in Aldi.
They were the only one.
But
it was funny.
Oh, bless you. So as a result of all of this that you've been through, you've kind of openly talked about being left with health anxiety as well. So how is it managing health anxiety when you've also got the health of little ones to look after as well?
Really hard. Really, really hard. I mean, since my mum's first diagnosis, I've been referred into the breast clinic 3 times. So the first was when my son was 3 months old, so mum's cancer had just come back, and I found a lump. And what's really interesting, when I went, and it was all fine, and when I went and got examined, it was just like a little fatty cyst or something. But because I was breastfeeding, obviously your boobs kind of get bigger.
They get worse, trust me.
They get smaller. And what was really interesting is the consultant that examined me basically firstly told me to go and breastfeed my son because my boob was too full.
So just squeeze it all out.
But also he said that it had been a long time since he'd examined somebody that was actively breastfeeding. So that was quite funny, and I hadn't really kind of even thought about that. But that was fine. It was nothing. Second time I think was probably about a year ago, and again just a fatty little lump that had appeared. The hardest time was back at the beginning of the year, and I think kind of my health anxiety was, for whatever reason, at quite a high point. And I was referred back in, and I sat down with the consultant. And so because of my mum's cancer, because it was so aggressive, I will have screening that starts at 40. So that we went through genetic testing, and that was what they advised, because although it's not a genetic default, genetically I'm more at risk because of the age my mum was and how aggressive her cancer was and how quickly she kind of passed away, and the fact that it had spread. So when I went back at the beginning of the year, I shared all of this, and I went in very kind of, you know, determined that actually what I was going to ask for is, well, I'm 37 now and I'm going to be 40 in 3 years. Why would I wait? I want to just start having routine testing now. And actually, if again, kind of take the emotion out of it and the kind of, you know, the a little bit of time has passed now, the thing that she said to me is, you could come now for a regular annual screening. But if you come in today and get scanned, tomorrow a lump might appear that you've not felt.
Yeah.
So it's going to put your mind at rest for a moment, and that's it. So what you're better off doing is really learning how to examine yourself and being really proactive when you find things. And if you go to your GP 20 times in a year because you found something, better that you've done that and you don't miss it than you kind of are blasé about it or waiting for that next annual scan.
Yeah.
And that is really good, sound advice, I think.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm trying to kind of manage that side of it.
Yeah.
We did have some health things with my son last year. So very long story short, we realised that he was kind of having some hearing problems. And it turns out he has a condition called sensorineural hearing loss, which basically means he's pretty much deaf in one ear. So he has a hearing aid.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was kind of that, oh my God, what is this? Is it a brain tumour? You know, just kind of going through all these really scary scenarios.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at that. And I think, you know, part of that is having worked in health for such a long time, having such a lot of lived experience of cancer, my head goes to the worst possible place.
Yeah.
And part of my reason for going back to bereavement therapy was because of that, because of where my health anxiety is, because I kind of like have this timeline in my head that my mum was 53 and that's not that far away. It's 16 years. That doesn't feel like long enough for me. You know, I'm not content with 16 more years. I want more. And part of that is managing health anxiety, because, you know, potentially that is the thing that will kill you, because you'll stress yourself out so much that you make yourself unwell, or you miss the moments that matter. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to address through bereavement therapy, is actually managing that health anxiety. And again, Anna Martha, who I've mentioned, I know she has a health anxiety like online module thing, and I keep meaning to go on and do it and pay for it and just do the course, because I think it is just about coping strategies.
Definitely,
because equally you could get knocked over by a bus tomorrow and you can't predict that.
No,
but if you kind of live your life waiting for that moment that something bad is going to happen, you're not living.
No, that's true. And I think a lot of mums probably suffer with anxiety in general, but a lot of like health anxiety, or the worries of something happening with intrusive thoughts and things like that. And I think that probably a lot comes with having the health of the people you love the most in your hands, in essence. Every little thing that they get. I had a very poorly little boy. He was in hospital like 9 times in his first year of life with chest problems. And every time he got a little sniffle or a little cough, I was like, oh my God, are we going to end up in an ambulance again? But now that they're getting a bit bigger, it's a bit easier. But like you, being in health and especially intensive care, it's hard seeing people coming in. And the elderly people, I can almost deal with, because they've had their life. They're probably more prone to getting some of the issues that they're coming in with. It's when we get the young ones that have had like a cardiac arrest or I don't know, something, and I'm like, oh my God, that could happen to me at any point. And I think it's about just remembering that you can't live your life like that. You can't just be like, oh my God, I could die at any moment. You've got to just live as if that could happen, like enjoy every moment. But that's what's tough when you're actually suffering with health anxiety.
And I think, you know, for anybody that's never suffered with health anxiety, it's really hard to explain it, isn't it? Because it can become all consuming. And it can be really crippling. And, you know, I don't know if you feel like this, but kind of working in health, there's just that kind of, I suppose, that ingrained feeling in me when I see things like that, and I'm like, I want to do so much more in my job, and I'm not clinical, so I kind of, there is a limitation of what I can do, but it's the one thing that I really struggle with, is not being able to make that difference. But equally, it's about kind of, you can make that difference if you really sort of protect yourself and look after yourself and look after your family, and actually that helps, because that reduces the impact then on health. And you know, there is a lot that we can control, but there's also a lot that we can't. And I suppose one of the things I'm having to learn is to get comfortable with a lack of control and a lack of certainty.
I think a lot of that comes with ADHD, though. We tend to be like massive control
Need to control
freaks,
everything.
Don't we?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Like a lot of different anxieties are going to come with that. Like my best friend's got death anxiety. Like she thinks about dying a lot, and like what's going to happen, like how will I feel, like she thinks about if I were to die, what will happen to my kids, all of this stuff. And she's got ADHD as well. So I think people have different types of anxiety as a result of needing to control everything and needing to know the answers to everything with ADHD. So it just makes it so difficult to navigate.
And I think there's still a lot of learning that's happening, because I mean, I again, I'm not an expert in ADHD by any stretch, but it's that thing of trying to decouple what is generalized anxiety, what's ADHD, and what's anxiety because of ADHD.
Who even knows?
And what's anxiety caused by having ADHD?
I know.
Because actually, anxiety is normal.
Yeah.
You know, there are lots of instances where actually anxiety is one of those things that protects us. It's that kind of, don't do that because, you know, it could be dangerous, and, you know, that kind of lizard brain or whatever it is. But then it is that you also don't want to be labelled with anxiety if actually it's your ADHD, because it's your ADHD that needs to be managed, and anxiety intervention doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah, definitely. So, it's all just a massive minefield, and it all overlaps, and it's all a bit messy. But hopefully in the coming years, there'll be more work done towards understanding it, and more support out there for those with ADHD.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Shall we go ahead and spin the wheel? Yes. Okie dokie. When you're ready, if you want to have a spin.
Try not to knock it over.
Ooh, confessions. So we're going to react to one of the confessions that have been submitted by my audience. So, I sometimes dislike my kids. I love them, but sometimes dislike them. Well, what do you think on that?
I think anybody who said that they didn't feel like that would be lying.
Fibbing,
absolutely. And, you know, similarly with kind of like friends, relatives, you know, these are the
husbands.
People, these are the people that you love more than anything in the world.
Yeah.
But you don't always have to like them.
No.
And I absolutely, I mean, I very much remember my mum saying, I love you, but I don't like you right now.
Oh, yes.
And that's okay. And that's normal. And again, I think kind of normalising that's really important.
I hate that we have to caveat it most of the time on social media, be like, I'm having a really shit day, my kids are being twats, but I love them. It's like you shouldn't have to say that. No, you shouldn't have to, because it's a given, you love those kids, but some days they just you just really don't like them.
That said, I don't like it when my kids go, I hate you.
I know.
He's fine, but I'm like, no, you don't hate me.
But then they don't actually mean that they hate you. They're just you know, the little people that don't know how to use their words. And then I'm getting all of this from my 5-year-old now. She's got so much attitude, and I'm like,
sass, isn't it?
All the sass. And I'm like, no, you don't hate me, you're just saying that because you're cross, and
you don't like the decision that mummy is making because you don't agree with it and you want something else. But unfortunately
I get like, I hate you, you're the worst mummy, and I'm like, well, no you don't, and no I'm not. So but I fully get that one. And it's almost kind of not a bit of a confession, because I feel like we all feel that way. This person's just been brave enough to say it. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been so lovely talking to you.
Oh, no, it's been great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I've had a great time. Thank you.
And thank you so much to everyone who is listening, watching at home. Please like, download, subscribe, all of the things. And if you have any confessions or rank bank stories or questions, please submit them by DMing me on titstumsandallthingsmum. Thank you.